In the annals of human history, few conflicts cast a shadow as long or as dark as the Second World War. It was a global conflagration that redefined nations, reshaped maps, and claimed tens of millions of lives. But how did the world arrive at such a catastrophic precipice? To understand the storm, we must first examine the subtle, yet potent, catalysts that accumulated over years, slowly eroding the fragile peace established after the Great War, setting the stage for an unimaginable conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended World War I, but its punitive terms sowed seeds of resentment, particularly in Germany. Stripped of territory, subjected to heavy reparations, and forced to accept sole blame for the war, Germany became a fertile ground for extremist ideologies. The Weimar Republic, fragile and burdened, struggled to maintain stability amidst economic hardship and widespread national humiliation, creating a volatile environment. Into this environment of despair and anger rose Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Promising a return to German greatness, an end to the Versailles dictates, and a radical vision of national rebirth, Hitler quickly gained a following. His ideology centered on racial purity, authoritarian rule, and the concept of Lebensraum, living space, for the German people, which inherently demanded territorial expansion, particularly to the east, setting a dangerous course for Europe. Hitler's first major test of international resolve came in March 1936. Defying the Treaty of Versailles and the Locarno Pact, which had demilitarized the Rhineland region bordering France and Belgium, German troops marched in. This was a calculated gamble, as Germany's military was still relatively weak. Had France and Britain intervened forcefully, Hitler might have been forced to withdraw, potentially altering the course of history before the full storm could gather. Despite the clear violation, neither Britain nor France took decisive military action. Their response was primarily diplomatic condemnation. Several factors contributed to this inaction: memories of the Great War's horrors, economic depression, and a belief that Germany had legitimate grievances regarding the Versailles Treaty. This policy, soon to be known as appeasement, was driven by a desperate hope to avoid another devastating war, but it inadvertently emboldened Hitler, signaling that his aggressive moves would go unchallenged. 2 years later, in March 1938, Hitler turned his attention to Austria, his homeland. German forces marched into the country, ostensibly to support a Nazi-led government, but in reality, to absorb Austria into the Third Reich. This Anschluss, or union, was another direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Austria, facing overwhelming German military presence and internal Nazi support, offered little resistance. The international community, again, did little beyond formal protests, further confirming Hitler's assessment of their resolve. With Austria secured, Hitler next set his sights on the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a significant German-speaking population. Hitler demanded its annexation, claiming the German minority was being persecuted. Czechoslovakia, with its modern army and defensive fortifications, was prepared to fight and had alliances with France and the Soviet Union. The crisis brought Europe to the brink of war, with intense diplomatic maneuvering attempting to avert outright conflict. In a desperate effort to preserve peace, leaders from Britain, France, Italy, and Germany met in Munich in September 1938. The outcome was the infamous Munich Agreement. Without consulting Czechoslovakia, the powers agreed to cede the Sudetenland to Germany. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned to London proclaiming he had secured peace for our time, believing Hitler's territorial ambitions would now be satisfied. The immediate threat of war receded, but at a profound cost. For a brief period, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. Chamberlain's words resonated with a war-weary public, hopeful that the specter of conflict had been banished once more. Newspapers lauded the diplomatic triumph, and parades celebrated the supposed victory of peace over aggression. Yet, beneath this veneer of tranquility, dissenting voices warned that appeasement was merely postponing the inevitable, arguing that Hitler's promises were hollow and his ambitions limitless. The fragile illusion of peace shattered just 6 months later, in March 1939. Hitler, ignoring the Munich Agreement, ordered the invasion of the rest of Czechoslovakia. German troops occupied Prague, establishing the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, while Slovakia became a German puppet state. This act of blatant aggression exposed the utter failure of appeasement. It became clear that Hitler's expansionist aims extended far beyond the German-speaking populations he had claimed to protect. The invasion of Czechoslovakia was a stark awakening. Britain and France finally realized that Hitler could not be trusted and that his ambitions knew no bounds. The policy of appeasement, designed to avert war, had instead merely paved the way for greater aggression. It had given Germany valuable time to rearm and expand its territory without significant challenge. The immediate aftermath saw a dramatic shift in Allied policy, with pledges to defend other vulnerable nations, particularly Poland, which was now clearly Hitler's next target. As tensions escalated over Poland, the world was stunned by a diplomatic bombshell in August 1939, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, two ideologically opposed powers, shocked observers. For years, Hitler had railed against communism, and Stalin had viewed fascism as a mortal enemy. The pact bought time for both sides, but its immediate effect was to remove the threat of a two-front war for Germany, clearing the path for its invasion of Poland. Beyond the public declarations of non-aggression, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact contained secret protocols that revealed the true, cynical nature of the alliance. These protocols carved up Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Poland was to be divided between Germany and the Soviet Union. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, along with Finland and parts of Romania, were assigned to the Soviet sphere. This secret agreement sealed the fate of these nations, turning them into pawns in a grand, expansionist game. With the Soviet flank secured, Poland stood isolated and vulnerable. Hitler now had a clear path for his aggressive ambitions. Germany's demands regarding the Polish corridor and the Free City of Danzig escalated. Despite British and French guarantees of support to Poland, Hitler remained convinced that these Western powers would not act. The world watched with bated breath, knowing that any further German aggression against Poland would almost certainly trigger a wider European conflict, unlike any seen before. At dawn on September 1, 1939, German forces unleashed a devastating assault on Poland from the west. This was not a gradual encroachment but a full-scale invasion, executed with overwhelming force. Armored divisions, supported by dive bombers and infantry, swept across the border, signaling a new era of warfare. The invasion was immediately condemned by Britain and France, who, true to their word, issued an ultimatum to Berlin, demanding an immediate withdrawal. The world held its breath. The German invasion of Poland showcased a revolutionary new military doctrine, the Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This strategy emphasized speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. It coordinated tanks, motorized infantry, and close air support to punch through enemy lines, bypass strong points, and encircle opposing forces. The goal was to achieve a swift victory before the enemy could effectively react or mobilize. Poland, with its cavalry and more traditional defenses, was ill-equipped to counter such a rapid, mechanized assault, leading to its swift collapse. As German forces continued their relentless advance into Poland, the ultimatum from Britain and France expired without a German withdrawal. Consequently, on September 3, 1939, both nations declared war on Germany. This marked the official beginning of World War II in Europe. The declarations were somber acknowledgments of a failed peace, signaling a commitment to resist Hitler's aggression, even if the immediate ability to aid Poland was limited by distance and logistical challenges. The dice were cast, and the world braced for a new global conflict. Just over 2 weeks after the initial German invasion, on September 17, 1939, the Soviet Union also invaded Poland from the east. This act was in accordance with the secret protocols of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, effectively extinguishing any hope of Polish resistance. The Polish army, already shattered by the German assault and fighting on multiple fronts, was utterly overwhelmed. The Soviet invasion meant Poland was now squeezed between two powerful aggressors, sealing its fate and ensuring its complete subjugation and division. Poland's heroic but ultimately futile defense lasted just over a month. By early October 1939, all organized Polish resistance had ceased. The country was fully occupied and divided between Germany and the Soviet Union, its sovereignty extinguished. The swiftness and brutality of the invasion served as a chilling precursor to the conflicts that would soon engulf the rest of Europe. The Polish campaign demonstrated the effectiveness of blitzkrieg and the ruthless efficiency of the Axis powers in their expansionist aims. Following the conquest of Poland, a strange calm descended upon Western Europe. From September 1939 to May 1940, despite declarations of war, there was little actual fighting on the Western Front. This period became known as the Phony War or Sitzkrieg, sitting war. British and French forces mobilized and dug into defensive positions, particularly along the Maginot Line, while Germany consolidated its gains and prepared its next moves. It was a period of anticipation, punctuated by propaganda, minor skirmishes, and a growing sense of unease. While the Western Front remained quiet, Hitler was far from idle. He used the phony war period to consolidate forces, refine blitzkrieg tactics, and planned his next series of invasions. The primary objective was to neutralize Britain and France before turning east. Strategic targets included Scandinavia to secure vital resources, and then the Low Countries and France to gain access to the Atlantic and remove the Western threat. The calm was deceptive, a brief pause before the storm was unleashed with renewed ferocity and precision. The phony war ended abruptly in April 1940, with Germany's invasion of Denmark and Norway. Denmark surrendered almost immediately. Norway, however, put up a fierce resistance, aided by Allied expeditionary forces. Hitler's motives were clear: secure access to vital Swedish iron ore supplies, which passed through Norwegian ports, and establish naval and air bases along the lengthy Norwegian coast. These bases would be crucial for future U-boat operations in the Atlantic and for challenging British naval supremacy. Despite Allied attempts to defend Norway, including landing British and French troops, their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. Germany's superior air power, coupled with the rapid deployment of specialized mountain troops and paratroopers, proved decisive. The Norwegian campaign was a significant psychological victory for Germany and a strategic blow to the Allies, demonstrating Germany's ability to project power across the sea and secure vital strategic interests. It highlighted the challenges of opposing the blitzkrieg on unfamiliar terrain and foreshadowed greater struggles to come. On May 10, 1940, Germany launched its devastating assault on France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, bringing an end to the phony war in the West. Using the same blitzkrieg tactics that had overwhelmed Poland, German forces bypassed the heavily fortified French Maginot Line by striking through the supposedly impassable Ardennes forest. This unexpected thrust caught the Allied high command completely off guard, demonstrating Hitler's audacity and the innovative power of the Wehrmacht. The Allied plan was to confront the main German thrust through Belgium, believing the Ardennes a natural barrier. However, German panzer divisions, led by generals like Guderian, executed a daring and rapid advance through the dense forest, emerging onto the plains of northern France. This maneuver effectively cut off the British Expeditionary Force, BEF, and large parts of the French army, trapping them against the English Channel. The Allied forces found themselves in a desperate situation, their strategic defenses shattered by the speed of the German advance. With Allied forces encircled, their backs to the sea at Dunkirk, a monumental rescue effort began, Operation Dynamo. From May 26 to June 4, 1940, hundreds of naval vessels and civilian boats, dubbed little ships, crossed the channel under heavy air attack to evacuate stranded soldiers. Against all odds, over 330,000 British, French, and Belgian troops were rescued from the beaches. While a strategic defeat, Dunkirk became a symbol of British resilience and a miraculous escape that saved a generation of soldiers to fight another day. Despite the Dunkirk evacuation, the rest of France remained vulnerable. With much of its army shattered and its government in disarray, French resistance quickly collapsed. German forces entered Paris on June 14, 1940. Just 8 days later, on June 22, France signed an armistice with Germany at Compiègne, in the same railway car where Germany had signed the armistice ending World War I. The once mighty French Republic had fallen in just 6 weeks, a shocking defeat that sent ripples of alarm across the free world. Following the armistice, France was divided. Northern and western France remained under direct German occupation, while Marshal Philippe Pétain established a new, authoritarian regime in the south, with its capital at Vichy. This Vichy France was officially neutral but collaborated extensively with Nazi Germany. It became a controversial symbol of collaboration and national division, though many French citizens continued to resist, forming underground movements and joining General Charles de Gaulle's Free French forces abroad. The soul of France was fractured. Britain now stood alone against Nazi Germany. Hitler's plan for invasion, Operation Barbarossa, hinged on achieving air superiority over the English Channel. From July to October 1940, the German Luftwaffe launched a massive air campaign against the Royal Air Force, RAF. This aerial struggle, known as the Battle of Britain, was the first major military campaign fought entirely by air forces, and it would determine whether Britain could withstand a German invasion and continue the fight for freedom. The RAF, though outnumbered, possessed key advantages. Superior aircraft like the Supermarine Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane were agile and deadly. Crucially, Britain had developed a sophisticated radar system that provided early warning of incoming German raids, allowing RAF fighters to be optimally positioned. This integrated air defense network, along with the bravery and skill of its pilots, allowed the RAF to inflict heavy losses on the Luftwaffe, denying them the clear skies Hitler needed for an invasion. Frustrated by the RAF's resilience and unable to destroy Britain's air defenses, Hitler shifted tactics in September 1940. The Luftwaffe began a sustained bombing campaign, known as the Blitz, targeting British cities, industrial centres, and ports. London bore the brunt of these attacks, enduring 57 consecutive nights of bombing. The aim was to break British morale and cripple its war economy. Despite immense destruction and civilian casualties, British resolve remained unbroken, demonstrating incredible resilience under fire. By October 1940, it became clear that the Luftwaffe had failed to achieve air superiority. The RAF had successfully defended its skies, and the German losses were unsustainable. Consequently, Hitler indefinitely postponed Operation Barbarossa, the planned invasion of Britain. This was a critical turning point of the war, as Britain's survival ensured a vital base for future Allied operations and prevented Germany from completely dominating Western Europe. It was a victory not just for the RAF, but for the morale of the free world. While the Battle of Britain raged, another front opened in North Africa. In June 1940, Italy declared war on Britain and France, then invaded British-controlled Egypt from its colony in Libya. The initial Italian advances were met with fierce British counterattacks. By early 1941, the Italians were on the verge of collapse, prompting Hitler to dispatch the German Afrika Korps, led by the brilliant General Erwin Rommel. This initiated a prolonged and complex campaign for control of the Suez Canal, vital oil fields, and the strategic Mediterranean basin. By April 1941, Germany had also extended its reach into the Balkans. After struggling Italian forces faced setbacks in Greece, Germany launched invasions of Yugoslavia and Greece. These swift campaigns aimed to secure Hitler's southern flank and prevent any potential British foothold in the region. Yugoslavia quickly capitulated, and despite fierce resistance from Greek and Commonwealth forces, Greece also fell. The Balkans campaign proved to be another resounding German victory, but it forced Hitler to divert valuable resources and slightly delay his most ambitious plan yet. Despite the non-aggression pact, Hitler had always intended to invade the Soviet Union, viewing it as the ultimate prize for Lebensraum and a crusade against Bolshevism. On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest land invasion in history. Millions of Axis soldiers, supported by vast numbers of tanks and aircraft, surged across the Soviet border in a massive surprise attack. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse quickly, underestimating its vast resources and the resilience of its people. The initial phase of Operation Barbarossa saw astonishing German successes. The blitzkrieg tactics, combined with the element of surprise and Stalin's initial disbelief, shattered Soviet border defenses. German armies advanced hundreds of kilometers, encircling vast numbers of Soviet troops in massive pockets and capturing immense swathes of territory, including the rich agricultural lands of Ukraine. Millions of Soviet soldiers were killed or captured, and it seemed, for a terrifying moment, that Hitler's gamble might actually pay off, bringing the Soviet Union to its knees. Despite the overwhelming German advance, Soviet resistance, though often disorganized, was fierce. As they retreated, the Soviets implemented a scorched earth policy, destroying infrastructure, crops, and anything that could be of use to the invaders. This deliberate destruction aimed to deny the Germans vital resources and bog down their logistical supply lines. While devastating to their own population, this tactic underscored the Soviet Union's determination to fight to the bitter end and began to frustrate the rapid German advance. By autumn 1941, German forces had reached the outskirts of key Soviet cities. Leningrad, in the north, was completely encircled, beginning a brutal siege that would last nearly 900 days and claim over 1 million lives. In the center, German armies pushed towards Moscow, the Soviet capital, believing its capture would break Soviet will. The Battle of Moscow involved desperate fighting in the freezing mud and early snows, as Soviet defenders, including newly formed Siberian divisions, launched fierce counterattacks to protect their capital. Hitler's war machine, designed for a swift summer campaign, was ill-prepared for the brutal Russian winter. Sub-zero temperatures, deep snow, and blizzards froze German engines, lubricants, and even the soldiers themselves. Supplies froze, and logistics broke down. Soviet forces, accustomed to the climate and equipped with winter gear, launched counter-offensives that pushed the exhausted and freezing Germans back from Moscow. The onset of winter halted the blitzkrieg and marked the beginning of a prolonged, devastating war of attrition on the Eastern Front, shattering Hitler's illusion of a quick victory. By the close of 1941, Europe was engulfed in a war of unprecedented scale. Hitler's seemingly unstoppable expansion had been checked, first at the Battle of Britain, and now, significantly, by the Russian winter. Yet, the conflict was far from over. The Eastern Front had become a brutal meat grinder, North Africa remained a contested theater, and the Pacific was about to explode with new hostilities. The world had witnessed the spark of aggression, the storm of blitzkrieg, and the initial, devastating clashes, setting the stage for even greater horrors and global transformation.